something that's helpful is nice. Like, here's a vitamin. This is going to be nice. But if you can come up with that painkiller where it's going to be like what they need, like that's going to knock their pain out. They have to have it. They have to get their hands on it. A topic like that, you're going to have much better luck.
Welcome back to the RV Queens podcast, where we dive into the world of women making money and living life on the road. Today, we're diving into the world of self-publishing with Kendra Fogarty, a full-time RVer, mom, and author who's mastered the art of creating passive income streams on the road. Kendra's journey started with a career in school counseling, but after taking the leap into RV life, she's completely reinvented herself by self-publishing books, Amazon reselling, and more. In this episode, Kendra breaks down the ins and outs of self-publishing, from finding your niche to creating and marketing a book. If you've ever dreamed of writing a book or creating income from your own content, this episode is packed with practical tips to get you started. So grab your coffee and let's roll. Real quick before we dive in, hey RV Queen! Want to make holiday shopping a breeze this year and support your community? Then you need to check out the RV Queens 2024 Holiday Gift Guide, curated by RV women for RV women. Whether you're looking for intentional gifts that speak to the heart, want to support your fellow travelers, or score some sweet discounts along the way, we've got you covered. Head over to rvqueenspodcast.com/gift guide to download the guide today. Kendra Fogarty, welcome to the RV Queens podcast. Where in the world are you this week?
So we are in South Florida right now, kind of near Siesta Key. We've been running from some hurricanes. So this is how we found ourselves here. And it looks like we're also watching another one on the radar right now. So we'll see if we have to run again. You know, this will be the fourth. No. This will be the fourth in like 3 months. We've had really bad luck.
I am so sorry. That is, I didn't even know there was another one coming. That's how not keyed into the news and weather I am.
Hopefully they're wrong.
So
we'll see how it goes.
For real. Sometimes, right? Don't the winds change sometimes? Yeah. So then in that, just real quick tangent, because this is very real about RV life. What are you going to do if the hurricane is headed back towards you again?
Well, we'd either decide if it's like category 3 or above and we're like in the path, then we would probably go to Georgia again, or somewhere else safer. But if it's tropical storm category 1, then we'd consider staying, or maybe if it's a 2, maybe we'd go in a house, leave the RV. Kind of just depends like what the scale is and where we are at exactly for where they're predicting the path.
I can't even imagine. Oh, props to you. Yeah, keep us posted on that. That sounds freaky. Well, I'm glad you're here and safe and sound today, and the weather's okay as we're recording. I always like to start with the question of what led you guys to call your quote unquote forever home. You left it, you sold it to live and travel around in an RV. Tell us that story.
I know. It's so wild. Like, never could have predicted this. When we were closing on that house, when we picked it out, definitely thought we were going to be grandparents in that house. So it's just wild how it's all played out. But we got to a point in our careers and our lives. I worked in education. My husband worked in healthcare. And our jobs changed so significantly after COVID. And that also made us just reflect so much on how we were living. And I didn't feel like I was living. I felt like I was working with a little bit of life sprinkled in when we could. So we were weekend campers. We had been tent campers before, and then we did get an RV around the pandemic. So like, we'd go on these weekend trips. I'd be like, this is my happy place. Can't this be like my all the time place? Like, how can I make this happen? And it seemed really wild, so far-fetched at first. Phil definitely thought I was losing it, which I kind of was. I was burning out in like a real bad way in my position. So we thought about it about a year, actually, before we decided to quit our jobs, our careers, our dream jobs that we had, and go all in. And I'm really grateful that we made that decision too. It's been great.
By the way, sidebar for the listeners, we met in real life last December, maybe almost a year ago. And we've kind of kept tabs. We haven't been able to camp together since then, but definitely kept in touch since then. And I'm glad you're on the road too. I'm glad you made that huge career change. And speaking of career change, there are a lot of RV women that I've met who have made a huge career shift that coincided with the shift into full-time travel. And for you, that career change was you were a school counselor. Is that the right
Correct.
phrase?
Yes.
Okay. So you went from that to working in HR in the tech industry, which is a huge change. So tell me about that experience. What are the thoughts and emotions that you had to navigate as you left your career that you put a lot of time and energy into?
Yeah. So leaving the career was really brutal. And I don't even want, I still cry sometimes when I think about it. So I hope I don't. But leaving my students, that was really hard. My kids were going to go to that school. My daughter did go to that school. It was not a decision that I made lightly. I loved my students, but I did not love my job anymore. It was basically impossible. I had 750 students in my caseload in my last year. And they needed so much more of me than I could possibly give. And that tore me up. I couldn't sleep at night. I would just see their little faces going through my mind, all the ways that I wasn't able to help them in the way I wanted to be able to help them. And I couldn't live with that anymore. So, so leaving though, I knew that I needed to choose my kids because a big part of it was that I gave everything I had to other people's children. But when I got home, I had nothing left for my own kids. So I decided I needed to make a major change so that they could get the best of me, not just what was left of me. So we actually took a year off when we first hit the road, where I wasn't even thinking of working for anyone else. I was only going to work for myself because part of the problem with my job was super toxic leadership. So I was like, and no one else is going to send me emails that make me want to throw up and cry. I'm not doing that. So it took me a while where I was like, I'm only working for myself. And then I started, thinking more about it and I felt ready. But the most important thing to me was going to be that supportive workplace and the work-life balance, which interesting to, when you're in an interview, and leading with those is a little bit of I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I know I don't want this job if they're not going to be supportive of what's most important to me right now. I knew I wanted a job that I would still be helping others, but that I would not be so emotionally exhausted like I was with counseling. I didn't want to do virtual counseling like people do that. I knew that I wasn't ready for that. So HR, though, has a ton of transferable skills, and that's the main thing that you're looking for when you're thinking of a career change. It can be in a total different area if your skills are going to transfer. It's all about how you market yourself and present yourself, so that those employers see how you could make that leap and how you can have a unique fit. How I would be surprised if there was anyone else who had my particular skill set and my background that had applied for that role. So you can really position yourself uniquely as long as you're focusing on those skills that you already have and how they're really going to give you that edge in your new position. So I got very, very lucky. It was actually the first job I applied to and the first job that I interviewed at. And I ended up getting hired there. So it's been great. They're really flexible. It took me a really long time to unlearn some of the I was still waiting for the ball to drop. I still thought someone was going to yell at me for no reason. I've made mistakes. I thought I was going to get, yelled at. Still hasn't happened. So it was really great to see that they were actually supportive. The work-life balance is phenomenal compared to what I dealt with in education. So yeah, I'm great. And I had no related experience. Didn't get a certificate. You can get HR certificates. I haven't done that yet. I just went in and I led with the skills that I could transfer there.
Good for you. Oh my gosh. And I'm so happy, sincerely happy that you found a workplace that's appreciates you and treats you right. I also used to work in tech and the work environment was not ideal. And I remember that feeling too. I quit during COVID. I started working for myself. But even though I haven't had a new employer since then, the feeling of I'm steeling myself for something bad to happen. Dude, that took me at least a year to just be like, whoa, no one is gonna come say everything I'm doing is wrong.
Just like opening emails. Like email used to be like such a major trigger. Like I didn't even want to see an inbox, and it took so long to get to where like I didn't have to panic. I wasn't in like full fight or flight, just checking emails.
When we're talking about running our own businesses, that's, to me, it's like a lot of us that have come from a 9 to 5. It's like, if you think this is like ground zero for like starting a business, like a lot of us have to take time to just get ourselves to like the emotional readiness of like making our own money, because we have a lot of baggage to climb out of. But that's
true.
A whole other podcast episode that we should get into another time. But let's talk about how you've been making money on the road. So like many of us, you are a multi-passionate person, and I love it. I love hearing all the ideas about what you're up to all the time. First of all, will you just describe your revenue streams and the different ways that you and your husband make money while you travel?
Yeah, for sure. So when I took that year off too, a big part of that was wanting to set up as many passive income streams as I could, because I knew that realistically, like I'd likely get into a different career path at some point, but I wanted to see what I could set up in that downtime so that it would just be on an autopilot when I did, choose another career. So the first thing I started working on was an online course. And I got this idea when I was still counseling. It's related to education. It's actually Section 504 case management. It's related to special education. It's a little different. A lot of school counselors hold this role. It's highly technical. It's a very important job. You're writing legal documents. However, school counselors are not trained to do this in grad school, because they're not supposed to be doing it, but a lot of schools make counselors do it anyway. So there's kind of a lot to unwrap there. But the long story short is that it's a challenging role that people are thrown into with no idea what to do. There's very limited support, very limited training, and there's a lot of error to make major mistakes and potentially be sued by parents of students with disabilities. So anyway, I decided it's kind of like a final gift, I guess. And, I don't know if I'll ever return to the field. Like, I'm not saying never, but while I took this break, I kind of wanted to give back to create these resources, because I spent so much time, reinventing wheels and researching and figuring out how to do it right and making mistakes where I could have been helping students. I could have been working directly with students during all of this. So I wanted to create a course so that, other counselors wouldn't be in that same position. So that was a big part of, I guess, my focus and my energy. And I still have a lot of scalable ideas, I guess, for that too, that I would love to spin off as well, because it is an area that I'm pretty passionate about. It's, super niche. So the course, so that was the first thing. And then we also got into some Amazon. We do online arbitrage. So we're kind of like reselling. So most of the time when you order something off Amazon, it's not like Amazon is selling it. There's a private seller that's selling that item. And then we also have a private label item. So I had designed a product and gone through that process to have a supplier in China create it, bring it to life, and then created the listing that way. It was actually inspired by my kids' bunk room. I think we have all noticed how thin these walls are, like unusually thin. Like, can we get any type of sound absorption here? So I created some wall panels that serve as wall art, but also some sound absorption. So then we put them in there, and it does help a bit. And then I did the self-publishing. So I've always wanted to write a children's book. I actually started writing the children's book that I published 7 years ago. So I didn't publish it until 6 years after I started writing it. It had always been a dream of mine. And this was another book that was inspired by my past career. It is an anxiety management guide for children. I got really frustrated with the books that were on the market when I was using them with my students, because they typically only focused on one manifestation of anxiety and maybe one or two strategies. And it's really not the reality of anxiety in children. There's often a lot of different sources and reasons they may be experiencing that. And there's a lot of different strategies that are helpful, and they need to have options and they need to practice them. And like deep breathing is not going to help everyone, and it's not going to help every child. So the book I wrote is more, it's more like a choose your own adventure, where it has maybe 15 common ways that children are anxious, and then like 20 strategies so that the kids can try them out. So that was definitely a labor of love. And I was really excited when I ended up getting that out there. And then I published a nonfiction book related to Section 504 case management as well. And that's when I got really passionate about self-publishing, because that helped open my eyes to what an incredible tool it is when you have another product or business or service. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase that a book is now like the new business card, but that it's like such a great way to build credibility and authority. My book is like a lead magnet for my course, so it doesn't include everything that's in the course. There's a lot of like templates, tools, resources, and like the videos, of course, that are not going to be in a book. So it includes some of the content, and then with like a discount code so that someone would then be funneled into the course if they choose. And if not, it would still be helping them like at a more affordable price. So so self-publishing is great because it also helps to get your story out there. I feel like everyone either has a story to tell or something that they can share that would help other people. So I love encouraging people when I feel like I've talked to so many people that have been like, oh yeah, like I would love to write a book, or I have this idea or that idea or this something that I want to share. It's really, after publishing or talking to people about it, I've noticed how common it is to be a dream of someone else's. And I don't know if people realize how possible it is to attain and how many ways it can benefit them. I also think one of the ways that my self-published books really helped was getting the job that I got when I changed careers. I talked a lot about that in my interview. We were talking about it was a highly technical skill that I learned on the fly, which transfer directly to the new skills that I'm learning, had to learn on the fly in the position. So that was like a pretty major talking point in my interview. So I feel like it helped that way as well. It's a major resume booster. Even if you're not looking to change careers, you're staying in the same career. For example, if I ever returned to the school counseling field, I would have some really great things on my resume that would make me super competitive. And it's passive income forever, like literally forever, as long as you stay relevant and keep your title updated and keep your information updated. It's just such a good feeling when I log in and I check my sales, and I am not doing a single thing. There just aren't, I love that it eliminates the gatekeepers. Because when I wrote the first children's book 6 years ago, I did submit it to some different publishers, and getting a children's book published is extremely challenging. Like Jimmy Fallon writes books now, like celebrities are writing books, like regular people off the street are not publishing children's book as often. There's just not as much availability. So when you self-publish, you eliminate that gatekeeper, you control all of your content, and you control all of your royalties. So I didn't have anyone telling me to switch things in my book that I didn't want to change. And I didn't have anyone getting a cut of my money when they didn't do much. And I've heard there's a lot of people out there who will even be traditionally published and return to self-publishing because they say that even with traditionally published books, they're still relying on those authors to do most of the marketing. So then you expect that they might handle it, and they're kind of like, well, we just published your book because you had X many followers online. So they're they'd basically choose someone who already had a following because they're hoping that they're going to market the book anyway. So anyway, I just think self-publishing is like a really solid way to go. And I love that it can get stories and ideas out there that may not have been accessible 10 years ago or whenever Amazon KDP started.
First of all, let's just get really specific about someone that wants to write a book and they've heard about self-publishing. They're intimidated by it, but they're also intimidated about reaching out to like a traditional publisher. Can you just describe the basic differences between working with both? You started to get into it a little bit, like when you started talking about marketing, but what are the differences of the two?
Well, first, it's going to be very challenging to work with a traditional publisher. That's like the main thing. They're not just like looking for anyone who's going to be able to write a book. That is a big hurdle in itself. If you do work with a traditional publisher, you do have to be careful too. Some of the contracts are not even going to be worth your time. They're very predatory. So they're going to take a significant amount of your royalties. They may have caps on it. You may get money up front. They're going to dangle like a carrot. And then when you realize how much you're going to receive after that, it's just not much at all. So if your book does end up doing really well, you're not going to reap any of those benefits. But again, it does depend on the publisher. They'll own your content after that. They'll own your words. And yeah, I think sometimes you can write something into it where you would still have rights to it. But I believe most of the time you no longer have rights to the work. And they can make edits at their own will. So if there's something that you don't agree with, they can change that. Sometimes they do the marketing, but not always. Again, that depends on the publisher as well. When you're self-publishing, though, you control the whole process. It's also much quicker. Usually, if you do get a deal with someone, you're looking at 1.5 years, 2 years before it's out on the market. But when you're self-publishing, you can, as soon as you have your words written, you can have that, published within a week. There's going to be steps involved, of course. The formatting does take a long time. That's a very technical process. But from book completion to when people could get their hands on it, it's going to be way, way shorter than a traditional publisher. And you're in control of all of your royalties, aside from what Amazon would be taking if you choose that route. And you can also sell directly, though, and have your books printed through like a different printer like Ingram Spark, and then charge the rate that you would like. And and then you'd be able to update your work on your own timeline and do your marketing.
So we decide to self-publish, and then we have an idea for a book. How do you know how to write the book? For example, you had your idea for your 504, this very specific book for school counselors. And how did you even know how to structure it and how to structure each chapter? Is this something you found a coach for or took a course for? Or is there a basic framework of book writing? How is this less daunting than I think it is?
That's a good question. And I should also clarify, when I'm talking about self-publishing books, I'm really not talking about fiction too. Fiction is a whole different animal. That's a whole different thing that I'm really not even referencing. Fiction, people have their own types of brains, and that is a whole different animal. And there's going to be a whole different style of marketing for that. It's not really a business lead magnet at that point. That's just a different thing. So we're really talking about nonfiction or potentially children's books. And that is a good question about how to lay it out. So I didn't have a coach, but I listened to a ton of podcasts. There's Dale's self-publishing, Reedsy. So I did research on that. I previously worked as a freelance copywriter on the side when I was counseling. So that also probably contributed to my ability to write that book. But I don't think it's so overwhelming that someone who doesn't have that background wouldn't be able to tackle it. I think one of your first steps, and I do have in my guide, I have quick start guide for self-publishing success. We talk about the steps and how you break it down, like what your action items would be, what your timeline would be for what you do first. And first would always be validating your idea, because you do first want to check to make sure that there's a market for it and that the market is not too saturated. So that's super important. I think that's something that sometimes people may skip. If there's already leaders in the area that you're looking at, it's going to be way harder to break into that zone, especially as a self-publisher. So validation would come first before you'd even start stressing about the outline. I think after that, though, you just want to break it down on like what type of, if it's something where you're trying to help someone, like what are the steps that you'd break it down? For mine, it just came logically because I was literally just breaking down the workflow from start to finish, the background information someone needs to understand before they start doing the actual work, and just brought it like step by step on what would need to happen. And then, of course, finishing it off with related things like the monitoring or the meeting tips and that type of thing. So I think it really just depends on the topic of how you might want to outline it. But a lot of times you just think about what you would want to read, what flow you would want to read it in, what you think would be helpful, what would make it logical to you if you were the student who was learning it. That's what I thought about a lot because I was frustrated that it had never been taught to me. So I just kept going back to how would I have wanted this presented to me in order to be successful.
Okay, perfect. I was going to ask, like, if you pick a topic, how do you know there's going to be an audience for that book? And it sounds like you, in your guide, which I love that you have, we will talk about how people can get their hands on it in a little bit. But yeah, it's similar to like starting a business. I'm sure you went through this when you were like putting Amazon products out there. There's always this level of let's not spin our wheels over here for like a passion project that we're like, yeah, I think everyone needs to know about how to clean a rug. Really? Like, how do you know people actually want to learn about this topic? I love that you said you got to validate it first before you put all this time and energy into it.
And you can't go too wide. Like if I just wrote a book that was on school counseling, that wasn't going to be a thing. You know, you have to make sure that it's targeted enough where there is a need for that. And yeah, that your topic is niche enough that someone is it's solving a problem for them. They're going to want to buy it for some specific reason that someone else isn't already an expert on. There was another book that was written on this exact topic. However, the cover was pathetic. And I knew that if someone was comparing our two books, that they would go with mine.
Because people do judge books by the cover. It's 100%. Just part of being a human.
So true.
Did you hire a designer? Like when you're doing all the work yourself and have full creative control, that means you have full creative control. How do you know how to design the cover and do the page layout and how much to charge, all that kind of stuff?
Those are a few different things. So the page layout, that was by far the hardest part of the whole project for me. Even aside from writing it was fine compared to actually doing the technical side on InDesign, which is the program that I use. I did hear after that Vellum is another option that is more user-friendly. I didn't think I'd have a problem with InDesign because I consider myself like decently tech savvy. I can usually figure something out. It was a huge learning curve. Like I got there, but it was not without like lots of swear words. And just thankful for YouTube too. It's just like all I can say. Like God bless those people putting that stuff out on YouTube. So that was a challenge. It wasn't exactly like a copy and paste, like just put the page number here and it's going to come together. There's some pretty technical edits that need to be changed, especially if you want it to look a certain way, you want to put, a header on it and that type of thing. It's doable. So don't get me wrong. It's totally doable. Doable to figure out for free too, without having to hire someone, because you could also hire someone like on Fiverr or on Upwork to complete it for you after you have your book written. The children's book was a little easier. I actually did that in Canva. So I entered the text boxes and the illustrations in there, and I was able to create the PDF there. So that wasn't as bad. It still took a decent amount of time, but it was way less frustrating, much more user-friendly on that platform. With the cover, I did have an illustrator for my children's book. So my illustrator designed my cover for the children's book. However, when you're creating the books, you have to create a document that includes the front and the back cover. Because when you think of a book, that's how it's printed. It's not like two pieces. So you do have to also create that document, which I used InDesign for as well, where you include the spine too and the text on there and all of that. So I did create that part, but my illustrator created the design that was on the cover. So that was helpful. And then the back part I just formatted like with the description and that type of thing. For my nonfiction book, the 504 book, I did end up using like a template that was on Canva. They have templates, and then I just like edited it. I didn't do heavy edits. I knew I didn't want it to be like too overwhelming. I wanted to keep it kind of simple.
I am amazed that you could do that in Canva. What? And I'm saying that because back when I was in college, I literally went to college to be a graphic designer, and you do everything that I learned in college in Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator. You can pretty much do most of those things in Canva now, which I think is amazing. I'm also super impressed that you used InDesign just for one project. That software is a beast, so props to you. If and when you like do another book, would you hire out for that really technical page layout part, or
no, not
would
that,
you do
now,
it yourself again?
Now that I learned the skill, which I was like, I initially was like, oh, I want to help other people publish. That's kind of what I was doing when I was learning it too. I was like, I'm doing it for myself, but it'll all be worth it because I would also love to do this for other people. And I thought I'll probably want to write other books. Like, I don't know. And at every point of the, like every step of the road, I was like, I'm sure I'm almost there. But it was like one of those hikes you're on where you think you're at the summit like 20 times before you get there. But I appreciate you saying that, because it was also like when I was in the middle of it where I'm like, they did not make this for just this random mom. This is for people who are professionals, and they don't want me here. And it is very clear to me that they don't want me here. No. Yeah. The help, even like the help guides on there, I was like, oh, they don't want me here. But I did hear that Vellum, I would actually probably try Vellum again. Yeah, I chose InDesign first, actually, because my husband was using Photoshop. So we had it anyway, but I would probably switch.
Oh, God bless. I cannot believe you did that. Okay, so let's talk about pricing. Does Amazon, when you're uploading all of your stuff, do they give you like, here's approximately what you should charge, or do you just make that up, or how does that work?
You're just going to want to look at other books in your range, like similar books, competitors. I priced mine less by a few bucks at first, just because, of course. But you kind of know what it would go for, what someone would expect to pay. They don't give suggestions because I don't think they would they just don't know the value of it, I guess.
How long did it take you to write that first book compared to your second book? Like, is the comparison valid, or is it like apples and oranges because one was a kid's book and one was a nonfiction?
The first draft, that's very different. The first draft of the children's book was a lot quicker than the nonfiction one. However, the edits for the children's book were much more involved. There would be such small tweaks. There'd be a lot more that I was that I was thinking about or wanting to change or tweak here and there, where you don't get that with a book that doesn't have a storyline. So it was a whole different editing process.
And did you have an editor or copy editor? I don't know the right terms here, but I'm assuming there's someone that you can just like send a book to and have them review it.
I had a friend do it, which is not really the advice that I'd give to someone. I'd say that you should hire an editor. I was overly confident, I will say too, probably in my writing, but I think everyone who writes is that way also. So I was like, no, yeah, my friend who like is in a similar, like she's a writer, she's in a similar field, not technically an editor. But I was like, she can look at this for me. But I would suggest anyone else to actually hire an editor.
I would be like, please help me. Yeah, however much money it takes, get someone in there to clean this mess up. That's just me. I'm sure everyone's wondering this. Like, how much money should people expect to make on their first self-published book?
That's a good question. And that's totally depends too on what type of book. The children's book has a way higher investment because of the illustrator, unless you're doing your own drawings. If you're an illustrator and you write the children's book, that's perfect. That is exactly where you want to be. If you have to hire an illustrator, though, you'll definitely want to think about it because you're maybe not doing it as much for the money as a labor of love, street cred with your kids. You know, that's like a huge part of the children's book. Like they are fascinated by the fact that I've written that book. And it can take some time to earn the money back from what you've invested with your illustrator. For that book, I want to say, too, I probably make, I think it costs $12. And I think I make $5 off of each book or something similar. So I might be messing that up now. I should probably know that. That one, though, like I didn't do it as much for the money, so I wasn't thinking about that as much. For nonfiction books, though, you don't have to worry about the illustrator. You can price them higher. You might be able to sell more copies. I have definitely sold more copies of my nonfiction book than I have my children's book, but I've also had schools that will buy for their entire department. So I'll get like an order of 20 for those, like that type of thing. So it's a little bit different. So I think it really just depends though. Like it's so hard to even make an estimation just because a topic can range so much. If you're doing something in finance too, those are extremely trendy. Things that are going to help someone make money, those are like really good markets to get into. You could probably expect to sell more of those than maybe some of the other topics, but it really, really just depends. I think when you're thinking of a nonfiction book too, you want to think a lot about that painkiller analogy, like something that's helpful is nice, like here's a vitamin, this is going to be nice. But if you can come up with that painkiller where it's going to be like what they need, like that's going to knock their pain out, they have to have it, they have to get their hands on it, a topic like that, you're going to have much better luck.
You are a member of the RV Queen Circles, and I thank you for being an engaged member. And you've gotten to know a lot of fellow women making money on the road. So who are the women that you interact with and think, oh, they should totally write a book?
Everyone, every single person that I have talked to. I am so serious. And it's like for a different reason though, like someone like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like you have so much knowledge about this particular area. You need like, there needs to be a guidebook on that. Someone else who just has a really, really interesting life experience. Like I think of Jen Bethune. I think she's talked about writing a book or something. Like she 100% she's talked about it, right? But she doesn't have it yet. I feel like she doesn't have it yet, but she needs to have a book.
Yeah, she's somewhere in the process. You're right.
Everyone has a story to tell. And everyone's, and then some of the specific businesses too that like, I think of Penny too, how she has this super unique way of helping people with their finances. Like if she had a self-published book for that, that'd be like an incredible lead magnet for her. So anyone who works in that type of service where they're offering a service, that's a great way to get, to get more leads. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Anyone who's offering, I saw someone who was like helping with UGC, and just like, or helping with any of the brand deals, any of that. It's just all great reasons to perhaps write a book.
I like your idea too that you mentioned at the beginning, how you use the book as a lead into your course, and you offer the discount at the back of the book. I think that's a great idea. In which case, anyone with a course should write a book.
100%. 100%. I get so many leads from the book, for sure.
That's awesome.
I also think it's something else that I was interviewed for parents, which they have like a million followers on Instagram, and like For Every Mom, pages like that. And I never would have gotten those opportunities if I didn't have the books to go along with it. So there's also just like so many different ways that self-publishing a book can just help your career in other ways too, that you might not initially think of.
Okay, what question am I not asking here? Like, what else do you think people should know about self-publishing their own book?
Okay, this is a great question. I'll share some of what I think the top mistakes are if someone else is self-publishing. So I think the first one, which we already talked about, was not validating your idea and just assuming it's a good idea. You definitely want to do some research on Amazon, see what kind of other books are out there. They also say that 97% of people who start writing a book don't finish. And only 1% of people who start writing a book see it published. I think, and maybe they're also including people who like write a chapter. I don't really know exactly how they're getting that statistic, but so I would also suggest creating a task list, an organizer. I have one in my guide too. You can steal mine. So I think it's just, you want to keep yourself accountable. It's easy to feel like, oh my God, I can't type another word. I want to give up on this. It's super easy to get there, especially if you're experiencing some writer's block, or just like not exactly sure where to go next. So, and part of that too is making the outline first, not starting with just chapters, but making sure you know where you're going from start to finish. I think another mistake is not optimizing the listing when you get to Amazon, or just making an unappealing cover, so that's super important. Some of the listings that you might see on Amazon, and you might have noticed this too, when you can tell that someone's book doesn't look professional. Sometimes I think there's like a stigma with self-publishing, which I don't really understand. A book is a book, and just because someone else isn't taking a cut of my royalties doesn't mean that it's any less of a book. But some people are still like, well, it was self-published. Well, it's still a book, and people are still buying it, and it's still helping people. But I think you don't want to initially make it look like you just did it out of your RV kitchen, right? You want to make sure it looks super professional. I think that also publishing it and then just thinking the sales or the reviews are going to come in and just be automatic is another huge mistake. There's also another quote. It says, like, once you write your book, you're halfway done. And it's so true. The marketing is never ending. When you launch your book, it's super important to have like a beta group that's going to help with your initial reviews and your launch plan. So you can't just think you're going to put it on Amazon and the people are going to run to it. You have to have a solid plan. I think also expecting Amazon to be the only source of traffic is a mistake. You do need like a long-term marketing plan in order to help. I have gotten many random sales from there, but you need to have more too. So I think those are just some of the common mistakes. I'll also share some of my proudest moments as a self-published author.
Please, yes. Okay, I would love to hear that.
All right. So my nonfiction title actually hit #1 in 3 different categories on Amazon: in educational counseling, educational professional development, and behavior, emotional, and social disabilities. So those were really good feelings. And my children's book hit #1 too in popular psychology, mental illness. So those were great days. And then the first month that I actually made over $1,000 in book sales, really good feeling. And then seeing my title at my favorite store online at Target, that's a moment you just never forget when you get to see your name on the Target website, right? It's the best feeling. Yeah, so good. And then Amazon will sometimes put your books on sale if they're selling a lot without affecting your royalties. So Amazon has done that for both of my books. So that's a really incredible feeling too. And then just the messages I get about the book helping someone. So yeah, so those are just, make a lot of because it is tough work, but totally worth it.
Quick sidebar. How does that work how did Target pick up your book if do they like pull in Amazon items or what is that about?
They can, but there's also another site. It's called Ingram Spark, and it's where you can kind of publish to go wide. Barnes and Nobles picked it up off there as well, and some other of the like smaller online book, like thrift books or like different book websites like that. And libraries can then also look through their catalogs as well. So it's kind of like another option, but it's not like consumer direct. So there aren't people shopping on it like Amazon. It's like a different type of platform, more for the businesses to pick up titles.
That's cool. I didn't know that existed. It's kind of like if you have a product and you want to sell it wholesale, like B2B, then there's like platforms where you can place your bulk item and then retailers pick and choose from there. Got it. Wow.
It's also the best spot to print your book if you want to sell it directly. Like if you want to have an online store or you want to go to like a trade show or go door to door selling your book, like whatever you want to do, that would be where you could get your titles.
Door to door selling your book, like at the campground.
Yeah, right? I'm
if
sure.
It really comes down to it, Kendra, you can go door to door at the RV park.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Okay, before I ask my last question, tell us about your latest offering, which you already told us is your guide, and where we can connect with you online, where we can buy your books, all the things.
Yes, I do have the quick start guide to self-publishing success. I was so inspired. This gave me like that final push to be like, I've been thinking about this for so long. I need to just do it. So I'm really, really excited about that. So that'll be linked on my Instagram, Take the Trip Fam. Yeah, and you can also definitely use a special podcast code to get 25% off that. And it's only $27, right? So you can't go wrong here. It just gives you helps take a lot of the research out of figuring out what the heck to do next if you are thinking about self-publishing, and and try to avoid some of those mistakes that are going to cost you in the long run. Okay,
so find Kendra at Take the Trip Fam on Instagram, and all of the links will be there. I love it. All right, I'm going to end on a fun question. An obvious one. What book or books are you reading right now?
I'm in the middle of a fantasy series. Oh, now I forget the name of it. I was really into like A Court of Thorns and Roses, right? If you've ever read that, like really into that. So now I'm reading every single book that Goodreads is telling me is related to that. And I'm forgetting what this one's called. It's something about like a War of Two Queens. I'm in the middle of the series, but I'm really into that style of book. I try not to read. Yeah, I read as like an escape right now. Sometimes I'll pull like a nonfiction out, but mostly, or like a self-help, but most of the time, that's what I'm reading. Is like some solid fiction or some beach reads.
Do you read right before bed?
I do.
Is that your approach?
Yes.
It's good for the brain. It really is.
Yes.
Let it go. All right. Also, are you in the process of writing another book right now? Because if you're looking for ideas, I have one for you.
Oh, interesting. So I do have half of a children's book written. So someday I might finish that one. Yeah, I took a different approach, same characters, but it was more of a choose your own adventure for making strong choices like good choices, so that children who are struggling to make good choices can see like, Did you ever read those books like, there were like scary ones where it'd be like, whatever, do this, go to page 23. So it's like that, but for kids. So they learn
Choose your adventure.
Yeah, choose your own adventure. Yep. So
literally what they're called. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're sorry.
I only know that because my 10-year-old reads them now. And it's the exact
thing.
Yes. And it's the exact same covers that are like kind of like 70s/80s-ish. And the content, like as an adult and a parent, is like kind of like, okay.
That's so funny. I'm so glad they're still a thing. I love that.
I am too. I'm glad you're taking that approach though, because I love those books. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I haven't seen it for like a picture book. So maybe it exists out there. Maybe not. But we'll see. We'll see if I ever finish it. I don't know. I'm always all mixed up in where I want to prioritize my side hustle world.
It's hard when you're multi-passionate. Got a lot of pans in the fire. Okay, here's my idea for you to just put on one of your back burners. A coffee table book of your travel memes. And for those listeners who don't know, Kendra is a master at creating memes.
Thank you. I know. I haven't made a meme in a while. Your Instagram handle
for a while, was RV Life Memes.
RV Life Memes, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And we have shifted away from that, which is fine and great and wonderful. But I do love your memes. If you could just like pop some of those in to a coffee table book for me to just like flip through and laugh sometimes.
I love that idea. Thank you so much. And thank you for so much for having me on the show. I have to tell you, Acadia is a big fan of the podcast. It's the only podcast she'll let us listen to. So it earned me major points when I told her that I was going to be a guest on the show.
Shout out to you, Acadia. I hope you're listening right now. And I hope you're so proud of your mom for being a great podcast guest and being a wonderful human. Thank you, Kendra, sincerely though, for being on the show, teaching us what you know about self-publishing. I'm personally excited to go get your self-publishing guide because I'm just like curious how all this works. And, like most entrepreneurs, I've got a book idea cooking back there, but seems really daunting. And it sounds like you are going to make it easy for us. So I'm excited to check that out.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that so much.
Okay. Well, thank you again for being on the show. And hopefully I will see you on the road. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and for being part of the RV Queens community. Remember to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And guess what? You can have conversations like I had on this episode with your fellow RV women who are living intentionally and making money on the road. Head to rvqueenspodcast.com/community to join RV Queen Circles today. It's a totally unique online space with a shared prosperity model that's all about community over competition. I'd love to have you be a part. All right, guys, I'll see you next week, or hopefully I will see you on the road. I would be like, please help me. Yeah.